American classical music began in the 18th century. The earliest American classical music consists of the style of songs used in religious services during colonial times. The first music of this type in America was a psalm book, such as the Ainsworth Psalter. Since the United States is made up of many states, some of which were parts of other nations, classical music of the states derived from those nations respectively. Most of these outside nations were European. Because of this, early American classical music was greatly influenced by the European style. In the 20th century, however, radical American musicians began to develop a new style. The new American style was not as strict as European music and had more freedom in its lines. Some composers of this new radical style included William Billings, Supply Belcher, Oliver Holden, Leonard Bernstein, Justin Morgan, and George Gershwin. In the early 20th century, George Gershwin was greatly influenced by African American music. He created a blend of music from several traditions. Similarly inclined was Leonard Bernstein, who at times mixed non-tonal music with jazz. Many of the major classical composers of the 20th century were influenced by folk traditions, especially Charles Ives and Aaron Copland.
Many of these composers were not formally trained for composition. They were either instrumentalists or vocalists, but many were amateurs at the art of composition. Anthony Philip Heinrich, for example, was formally trained in instrumental music, but had self-taught composition. He had traveled through the United States gaining inspiration and wrote colorful pieces that had nothing in common with European music. He was the first American composer to write for a symphony orchestra, as well as the first to conduct a Beethoven symphony in the United States. It was during the 20th century that film music was first created. Over the evolution of the cinema, the music took on a greater sophistication. Significant composers of the film music include Erich Wolfgang, Bernard Herrmann, Jerry Goldsmith, and John Williams. The 20th century also saw important works published by immigrant composers such as Igor Stravinsky and Arnold Schoenberg, who came to America seeking artistic freedom and economic opportunity. In Europe, Igor Stravinsky's music was greatly criticized, given it did not follow the strict rules for classical music that belonged there. In order to continue his writing, Stravinsky traveled to the United States to find a place where he would be more accepted. Much of modern popular music can trace its roots to the emergence in the late 19th century of African American blues and the growth of gospel music in the 1920s. Classical, contemporary, and modern music still continues to be made today.